Max Stirner, The Ego and His Own. Men of the Old Time and the New. B. The Moderns. If any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. The old is passed away, behold, all is become new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. As it was said above, to the ancients the world was a truth. We must say here, to the moderns the spirit was a truth. But here, as there, we must not omit the supplement, a truth whose untruth they tried to get back of, and at last they really do. A course similar to that which antiquity took may be demonstrated in Christianity also, in that the understanding was held a prisoner under the dominion of the Christian dogmas up to the time preparatory to the Reformation, but in the pre-Reformation century asserted itself sophistically and played heretical pranks with all tenets of the faith. And the talk then was, especially in Italy and at the Roman court, if only the heart remains Christian-minded, the understanding may go right on taking its pleasure. Long before the Reformation, people were so thoroughly accustomed to fine-spun wranglings that the Pope and most others looked on Luther's appearance too as a mere wrangling of monks at first. Humanism corresponds to sophisticism, and, as in the time of the sophists, Greek life stood in its fullest bloom, the Periclean age. So the most brilliant thing happened in the time of humanism, or as one might perhaps also say, of Machiavellianism, printing, the New World, etc. At this time, the heart was still far from wanting to relieve itself of its Christian contents. But finally the Reformation, like Socrates, took hold seriously of the heart itself, and since then hearts have been growing visibly more un-Christian. As with Luther, people began to take the matter to heart. The outcome of the step of the Reformation must be that the heart also gets lightened of the heavy burden of Christian faith. The heart, from day to day more un-Christian, loses the contents with which it has busied itself, till at last nothing but empty warm-heartedness is left it. The quite general love of men, the love of man, the consciousness of freedom, self-consciousness. Only so is Christianity complete, because it has become bald, withered, and void of contents. There are now no contents whatever against which the heart does not mutiny, unless indeed the heart unconsciously or without self-consciousness lets them slip in. The heart criticizes to death with hard-hearted mercilessness everything that wants to make its way in, and is capable, except as before unconsciously or taken by surprise, of no friendship, capable of no love. What could there be in men to love, such as they are all alike egoists? None of them man as such, none are spirit only. The Christian loves only the spirit, but where could one be found who should really be nothing but spirit? To have a liking for the corporeal man with hide and hair, why, that would no longer be a spiritual warm-heartedness. It would be treason against pure warm-heartedness, the theoretical regard. For pure warm-heartedness is by no means to be conceived as like that kindliness that gives everybody a friendly handshake. On the contrary, pure warm-heartedness is warm-hearted toward nobody. It is only a theoretical interest, concern for man as man, not as a person. The person is repulsive to it because of being egoistic, not because of not being that abstraction, man. But it is only for the abstraction that one can have a theoretical regard. To pure warm-heartedness or pure theory, men exist only to be criticized, scoffed at, and thoroughly despised. To it, no less than to the fanatical parson, they are only filth and other such nice things. Pushed to this extremity of disinterested warm-heartedness, we must finally become conscious that the Spirit, which alone the Christian loves, is nothing. In other words, that the Spirit is a lie. What has here been set down roughly, summarily, and doubtless as yet incomprehensibly, will, it is to be hoped, become clear as we go on. Let us take up the inheritance left by the ancients, and as active workmen, do with it as much as can be done with it. The world lies despised at our feet, far beneath us, and our heaven, into which its mighty arms are no longer thrust and its stupefying breath does not come. Seductively as it may pose, it can delude nothing but our sense. It cannot lead away astray the Spirit, and Spirit alone, after all, we really are. Having once got to the back of things, the Spirit has also got above them, and become free from their bonds, emancipated, supernal, free. So speaks spiritual freedom. To the spirit which after long toil has got rid of the world, the worldless spirit, nothing is left after the loss of the world and the worldly but the spirit and the spiritual. Yet, as it has only moved away from the world and made of itself a being free from the world, without being able really to annihilate the world, this remains to it a stumbling block that cannot be cleared away, a discredited existence. And as on the other hand it knows and recognizes nothing but the spirit and the spiritual, it must perpetually carry about with it the longing to spiritualize the world, to redeem it from the blacklist. Therefore, like a youth, it goes about with plans for the redemption or improvement of the world. The ancients we saw served the natural, the worldly, the natural order of the world, but they incessantly asked themselves of this service, and when they had tired themselves to death in ever-renewed attempts at revolt, then among their last sighs was born to them the God, the conqueror of the world. All their doing had been nothing but wisdom of the world, an effort to get back of the world and above it. But what is the wisdom of the many following centuries? What did the moderns try to get back of? No longer to get back of the world, for the ancients had accomplished that, but back of the God whom the ancients bequeathed to them, back of the God who is spirit, back of everything that is the spirits, the spiritual. But the activity of the Spirit, which searches even the depths of the Godhead, is theology. If the ancients have nothing to show but wisdom of the world, the moderns never did nor do make their way further than to theology. We shall see later that even the newest revolts against God are nothing but the extremist efforts of theology, that is, theological insurrections. 1. The Spirit. The realm of spirits is monstrously great. There is an infinite deal of the spiritual. Yet let us look and see what the spirit, this bequest of the ancients, properly is. Out of their birth pangs it came forth, but they themselves could not utter themselves as spirit. They could give birth to it. It itself must speak. The born God, the Son of Man, is the first to utter the word that the Spirit, He, God, has to do with nothing earthly, and no earthly relationship, but solely with the Spirit and spiritual relationships. Is my courage indestructible under all the world's blows, my inflexibility and my obduracy, perchance already spirit in the full sense, because the world cannot touch it? Why then it would not yet be at enmity with the world, and all its action would consist merely in not succumbing to the world. No, so long as it does not busy itself with itself alone, so long as it does not have to do with its world, the spiritual, alone. It is not free spirit, but only the spirit of this world, the spirit fettered to it. The spirit is free spirit, that is really spirit, only in the world of its own. In this, the earthly world, it is a stranger. Only through a spiritual world is the spirit really spirit, for this world does not understand it and does not know how to keep the maiden from a foreign land from departing. But where is it to get this spiritual world? Where but out of itself? It must reveal itself, and the words that it speaks, the revelations in which it unveils itself, these are its world. As a visionary lives and has his world only in the visionary pictures that he himself creates, as a crazy man generates for himself his own dream world, without which we could not be crazy, so the spirit must create for itself its spirit world, and it is not spirit till it creates it. Thus its creations make it spirit, and by its creatures we know it, the Creator, and them it lives. They are its world. Now what is the spirit? It is the creator of a spiritual world. Even in you and me, people do not recognize spirit till they see that we have appropriated to ourselves something spiritual. Though thoughts may have been set before us, we have at least brought them to live in ourselves. For, as long as we were children, the most edifying thoughts might have been laid before us without our wishing, or being able to reproduce them in ourselves. So the spirit also exists only when it creates something spiritual. It is real only together with the spiritual, its creature. As then we know it by its works, the question is what these works are. But the works or children of the spirit are nothing else but spirits. If I had before me Jews of the true metal, I should have to stop here and leave them standing before this mystery, as for almost 2,000 years they have remained standing before it, unbelieving and without knowledge. But as you, my dear reader, are at least not a full-blooded Jew, for such a one would not go astray as far as this, we will still go along a bit of road together, till perhaps you too turn your back on me, because I laugh in your face. If somebody told you you were altogether spirit, you would take hold of your body and not believe him, but answer, I have a spirit, no doubt, but do not exist only as a spirit, but as a man, with a body. You would still distinguish yourself from your spirit. But, replies he, it is your destiny, even though now you are yet going about in the fetters of your body, to be one day a blessed spirit, and, however you may conceive of the future aspect of your spirit, as much as yet certain, that in death you will put off this body, and yet keep yourself, your spirit, for all eternity. Accordingly, your spirit is the eternal and true in you, the body only a dwelling here below, which you may leave and perhaps exchange for another. Now you believe him. For the present, indeed, you are not spirit only, but when you emigrate from the mortal body, as one day you must, then you will have to help yourself without the body, and therefore it is needful that you be prudent and care in time for your proper self. What should it profit a man if he gained the whole world and yet suffered damage in his soul? But even granted that doubts, raised in the course of time against the tenets of the Christian faith, have long since robbed you of faith in the immortality of your spirit, you have nevertheless left one tenet undisturbed, and still ingenuously adhere to the one truth, that the spirit is your better part, and that the spiritual has greater claims on you than anything else. Despite all your atheism and zeal against egoism, you concur with the believers of immortality. But whom do you think of under the name of egoist? A man who, instead of living to an idea that is a spiritual thing, and sacrificing to it his personal advantage, serves the latter. A good patriot brings his sacrifice to the altar of the fatherland, but it cannot be disputed that the fatherland is an idea, since for beasts incapable of mind, or children as yet without mind, there is no fatherland and no patriotism. Now, if anyone does not approve himself as a good patriot, he betrays his egoism with reference to the fatherland, and so the matter stands in innumerable other cases. He who in society takes the benefit of a prerogative sins of a prerogative sins egoistically against the idea of equality. He who exercises dominion is blamed as an egoist against the idea of liberty, and so on. You despise the egoist because he puts the spiritual in the background as compared with the personal, and has his eyes on himself where you would like to see him act to favour an idea. The distinction between you is that he makes himself the central point, but you, the spirit, or that you cut your identity in two and exalt your proper self, the spirit, to be ruler of the paltrier remainder, while he will hear nothing of this cutting in two and pursues spiritual and material interests just as he pleases. You think, to be sure, that you are falling foul of those who enter into no spiritual interest at all, but in fact you curse at everybody who does not look on the spiritual interest as his true and highest interest. You carry your nightly service for this beauty, so far that you affirm her to be the only beauty of the world. You live not to yourself, but to the spirit, and to what is the spirit's, that is, ideas. As the spirit exists only in its creating of the spiritual, let us take a look about us for its first creation. If only it has accomplished this, there follows thenceforth a natural propagation of creations, as according to the myth only the first human beings needed to be created, the rest of the race propagating of itself. The first creation, on the other hand, must come forth out of nothing. The spirit has toward its realization nothing but itself, or rather it is not yet even itself, but must create itself. Hence its first creation is itself, the spirit. Mystical as this sounds, we yet go through it as an everyday experience. Are you a thinking being before you think? In creating the first thought, you create yourself, the thinking one, for you do not think before you think a thought, or have a thought. Is it not your singing that first makes you a singer, your talking that makes you a talker? Now so too it is the production of the spiritual that first makes you a spirit. Meanwhile, as you distinguish yourself from the thinker, singer, and talker, so you no less distinguish yourself from the spirit, and feel very clearly that you are something besides spirit. But as in the thinking ego, hearing and sight easily vanish in the enthusiasm of thought, so you have also been seized by the spirit enthusiasm, and you now long with all your might to become Holy Spirit, and to be dissolved in spirit. The spirit is your ideal, the unattained, the otherworldly. Spirit is the name of your God. God is spirit. Against all that is not spirit, you are a zealot, and therefore you play the zealot against yourself, who cannot be rid of a remainder of the non-spiritual. Instead of saying, I am more than spirit, you say with contrition, I am less than spirit, and spirit, pure spirit, or the spirit that is nothing but spirit. I can only think of, but am not, and since I am not it, it is another, exists as another, whom I call God. It lies in the nature of the case that the spirit that is to exist as pure spirit must be an otherworldly one, for, since I am not it, it follows that it can only be outside me, since in any case a human being is not fully comprehended in the concept spirit. It follows that the pure spirit, the spirit as such, can only be outside of men, beyond the human world, not earthly, but heavenly. Only from this disunion in which I and the spirit lie, only because I and spirit are not names for one and the same thing, but different names for completely different things, only because I am not spirit and spirit not I, only from this do we get a quite tautological explanation of the necessity that the spirit dwells in the other world. That is God. But from this it also appears how thoroughly theological is the liberation of Feuerbach is labouring to give us. What he says is that we had only mistaken our own essence, and therefore looked for it in the other world, but that now, when we see that God was only our human essence, we must recognize it again as ours and move it back out of the other world into this, to God who is Spirit. Feuerbach gives the name our essence. Can we put up with this, that our essence is brought into opposition to us, that we are split into an essential and an unessential self? Do we not therewith go back into the dreary misery of seeing ourselves banished out of ourselves? What have we gained then, when for a variation we have transferred into ourselves the divine outside us? Are we that which is in us, as little as we are that which is outside us? I am as little my heart as I am my sweetheart, this other self of mine. Just because we are not the spirit that dwells in us, just for that reason we had to take it and set it outside us. It was not we, did not coincide with us, and therefore we could not think of it as existing otherwise than outside us, on the other side from us, in the other world. With the strength of despair, Feuerbach clutches at the total substance of Christianity, not to throw it away, no, to drag it to himself, to draw it, the long yearned for, ever distant, out of its heaven with a last effort, and keep it by him forever. Is not that a clutch of the uttermost despair, a clutch for life or death? And is it not at the same time the Christian yearning and hungering for the other world? The hero wants not to go into the other world, but to draw the other world to him, and compel it to become this world. And since then, has not all the world, with more or less consciousness, been crying that this world is the vital point, and heaven must come down on earth and be experienced even here? Let us in brief set Feuerbach's theological view and our contradiction over against each other. The essence of man is man's supreme being. Now by religion, to be sure, the supreme being is called God, and regarded as an objective essence, but in truth it is only man's own essence, and therefore the turning point of the world's history is that henceforth no longer God, but man is to appear to man as God. To this we reply, the Supreme Being is indeed the essence of man, but just because it is his essence and not he himself, it remains quite immaterial whether we see it outside him and view it as God, or find it in him and call it essence of man or man. I am neither God nor man, neither the supreme essence nor my essence, and therefore it is all one in the main whether I think of the essence as in me or outside me. Nay, we really do always think of the Supreme Being as in both kinds of otherworldliness, the inward and outward, at once. For the Spirit of God is, according to the Christian view, also our spirit, and dwells in us. It dwells in heaven and dwells in us. We poor things are just its dwelling. And if Feuerbach goes on to destroy its heavenly dwelling and force it to move to us bag and baggage, then we, its earthly apartments, will be badly overcrowded. But after this digression, which, if we were at all proposing to work by line and level, we should have had to save for later pages in order to avoid repetition, we return to the Spirit's first creation. The Spirit is itself. The Spirit is something other than myself. But this other, what is it? Two, the possessed. Have you ever seen a spirit? No, not I, but my grandmother. Now, you see, it's just so with me too. I myself haven't seen any, but my grandmother had them running between her feet all sorts of ways, and out of confidence in our grandmother's honesty, we believe in the existence of spirits. But we had no grandfathers then, and did they not... But had we no grandfathers then? And did they not shrug their shoulders every time our grandmothers told about their ghosts? Yes, those were unbelieving men who have harmed our good religion much. Those rationalists. We shall feel that, What else lies at the bottom of this warm faith in ghosts, if not the faith in the existence of spiritual beings in general? And is not this latter itself disastrously unsettled if saucy men of the understanding may disturb the former? The Romanticists were quite conscious what a blow the very belief in God suffered by the laying aside of the belief in spirits or ghosts, and they tried to help us out of the baleful consequences not only by their reawakened fairy world, but at last, and especially, by the intrusion of a higher world by their somnambulists of Prevost, etc. The good believers and fathers of the Church did not suspect that with the belief in ghosts the foundation of religion was withdrawn, and that since then it has been floating in the air. He who no longer believes in any ghost needs only to travel on consistently in his unbelief to see that there is no separate being at all concealed behind things, no ghost, or what is naively reckoned as synonymous even in our use of words, no spirit. Spirits exist. Look about in the world and say for yourself whether a spirit does not gaze upon you out of everything. Out of the lovely little flower there speaks to you the spirit of the Creator, who has shaped it so wonderfully. The stars proclaim the spirit that established their order. From the mountain tops a spirit of sublimity breathes down. Out of the waters a spirit of yearning murmurs up, and out of men millions of spirits speak. The mountains may sink, the flowers fade, the world full of stars fall in ruins, the men die. What matters the wreck of these visible bodies? The spirit, the invisible spirit, abides eternally. Yes, the whole world is haunted. Only is haunted? Nay, it itself walks. It is uncanny through and through. It is the wandering, seeming body of a spirit. It is a spook. What else should a ghost be then than an apparent body, but real spirit? Well, the world is empty, is naught, is only glamorous semblance. Its truth is the spirit alone. It is the seeming body of a spirit. Look out near or far, a ghostly world surrounds you everywhere. You are always having apparitions or visions. Everything that appears to you is only the phantasm of an indwelling spirit. It is a ghostly apparition. The world is to you only a world of appearances, behind which the spirit walks. You see spirits. Are you perchance thinking of comparing yourself with the ancients who saw gods everywhere? Gods, my dear modern, are not spirits. Gods do not degrade the world to a semblance and do not spiritualize it. But to you the whole world is spiritualized and has become an enigmatical ghost. Therefore do not wonder if you likewise find in yourself nothing but a spook. Is not your body haunted by your spirit? And is not the latter alone the true and real, the former only the transitory naught, or a semblance? Are we not all ghosts, uncanny beings that wait for deliverance, to wit, spirits? Since the Spirit appeared in the world, since the Word became flesh, since then the world has been spiritualized, enchanted, a spook. You have spirit, for you have thoughts. What are your thoughts? Spiritual entities, not things then. No, but the spirit of things, the main point in all things, the inmost in them, their idea. Consequently, what you think is not only your thought. On the contrary, it is that in the world which is most real, that which is properly to be called true. It is the truth itself. If I only think truly, I think the truth. I may, to be sure, err with regard to the truth and fail to recognize it, but if I recognize truly, the object of my cognition is the truth. So I suppose you strive at all times to recognize the truth. To me, the truth is sacred. It may well happen that I find a truth incomplete and replace it with a better, but the truth I cannot abrogate. I believe in the truth, therefore I search in it. Nothing transcends it. It is eternal. Sacred, eternal is the truth. It is the sacred, the eternal. But you, who let yourself be filled and led by this sacred thing, are yourself hallowed. Further, the sacred is not for your senses, but you never as a sensual man discover its trace, and for your faith, or more definitely still, for your spirit, for itself, you know it is a spiritual thing. A spirit is spirit for the spirit. The sacred is by no means so easily to be set aside as many at present affirm, who no longer take this unsuitable word into their mouths. If even in a single respect I am still upbraided as an egoist, there is left the thought of something else which I should serve more than myself, and which must be to me more important than everything. In short, something in which I should have to seek my true welfare, something sacred. However human the sacred thing may look, though it be the human itself, that does not take away its sacredness, but it most changes it from an unearthly to an earthly sacred thing, from a divine one to a human. Sacred things exist only for the egoist who does not acknowledge himself, the involuntary egoist. For him who is always looking after his own and yet does not count himself as the highest being, who serves only himself and at the same time always thinks he is serving a higher being, and who knows nothing higher than himself and yet is infatuated about something higher. In short, for the egoist who would like not to be an egoist and abases himself, combats his egoism, but at the same time abases himself only for the sake of being exalted, and therefore of gratifying his egoism. Because he would like to cease to be an egoist, he looks about in heaven and earth for higher beings to serve and sacrifice himself to. But however much he shakes and disciplines himself, in the end he does all for his own sake, and the disreputable egoism will not come off him. On this account I call him the involuntary egoist. His toil and care to get away from himself is nothing but the misunderstood impulse to self-disillusion. If you are bound to your past hour, if you must babble today because you babbled yesterday, if you cannot transform yourself each instant, you feel yourself fettered to slavery and benumbed. Therefore, over each minute of your existence, a fresh minute of the future beckons to you, and developing yourself, you get away from yourself. That is, from the self that was at that moment. As you are at each instant, you are your own creature, and in this very creature you do not wish to lose yourself, the creator. You are yourself a higher being than you are, and surpass yourself. But that you are the one who is higher than you, that is, that you are not only creature, but likewise your creator. Just this, as an involuntary egoist, you fail to recognize, and therefore the higher essence is to you an alien essence. Every higher essence, such as truth, mankind, and so on, is an essence over us. Alienness is a criterion of the sacred. In everything sacred, there lies something uncanny, strange, such as we are not quite familiar and at home in. What is sacred to me is not my own, and if I, for instance, the property of others was not... What is sacred to me is not my own, and if, for instance, the property of others was not sacred to me, I should look upon it as mine, where I should take it to myself when occasion offered. Or on the other side, if I regard the face of the Chinese emperor as sacred, it remains strange to my eye, which I close at its appearance. Why is an incontrovertible mathematical truth, which might even be called eternal according to the common understanding of words, not sacred? Because it is not yet revealed, or not the revelation of a higher being. Because it is not revealed, or not the revelation of a higher being. If by revealed we understand only the so-called religious truths, we go far astray, and entirely fail to recognize the breadth of the concept higher being. Atheists keep up their scoffing at the higher being, which is also honored under the name of the highest, or être suprême, and trample in the dust one proof of his existence after another. without noticing that they themselves, out of need for a higher being, only annihilate the old to make room for the new. Is man, perchance, not a higher essence than an individual man? And must not the truths, rights, and ideas which result from the concept of him be honoured and counted sacred as revelations of this very concept? For even though we should abrogate many a truth that seemed to be made manifest by this concept, yet this would only evince a misunderstanding on our part, without in the least degree harming the sacred concept itself, or taking their sacredness from those truths that must rightly be looked upon as its revelations. Man reaches beyond every individual man, and yet, though he be his essence, is not in fact his essence, which rather would be as single as he is the individual himself, but a general and higher, yes, for atheists, the highest essence. And as the divine revelations were not written down by God with his own hand, but made public through the Lord's instruments, so also the new highest essence does not write out its revelations itself, but lets them come into our knowledge through true men. Only the new essence betrays, in fact, a more spiritual style of conception than the old God, because the latter was still represented in a sort of embodiness or form, while the undimmed spirituality of the new is retained, and no special material body is fancied for it. And withal it does not lack corporeity, which even takes on yet more seductive appearance, because it looks more natural and mundane, and consists in nothing less than in every bodily man, yes, or outright in humanity or all men. Thereby the spectralness of the spirit in a seeming body has once again become really solid and popular. Sacred, then, is the highest essence, and everything in which this highest essence reveals or will reveal itself. But hallowed are they who recognize this highest essence together with its own, together with its revelations. The sacred hallows in turn its reverer, who by his worship becomes himself a saint, as likewise what he does is saintly, a saintly walk, saintly thoughts and actions, imaginations and aspirations. It is easily understood that the conflict over what is revered as the highest essence can be significant only so long as even the most embittered opponents can see to each other the main point, that there is a highest essence to which worship or service is due. If one should smile compassionately at the whole struggle over a highest essence, as a Christian might at the war of words between a Shiite and a Sunnite, or between a Brahmin and a Buddhist, then the hypothesis of a highest essence would be null in his eyes, and the conflict of this basis an idle play. Whether then the one God or the three in one, whether the Lutheran God or the Être Supreme, or not God at all, but man may represent the highest essence, that makes no difference at all for him who denies the highest essence itself. For in his eyes, those servants of a highest essence are one and all pious people, the most raging atheist, not less than the most faith-filled Christian. In the foremost place of the sacred, then, stands the highest essence, and the faith in this essence our holy faith. The spook. With ghosts we arrive in the spirit realm, in the realm of essences. What haunts the universe and has its occult, incomprehensible being there is precisely the mysterious spook that we call highest essence. And to get to the bottom of this spook, to comprehend it, to discover reality in it, to prove the existence of God, this task men set to themselves for thousands of years, with the horrible impossibility, the endless damned labour of transforming the spook into a non-spook, the unreal into something real, the spirit into an entire and corporeal person. With this they tormented themselves to death. Behind the existing world they sought the thing in itself, the essence. Behind the thing they sought the unthing. When one looks to the bottom of anything, searches out its essence, one often discovers something quite other than what it seems to be. Honeyed speech and a lying heart, pompous words and beggarly thoughts, and so on. By bringing the essence into prominence, one degrades the hitherto misapprehended appearance to a bare semblance, a description. The essence of the world, so attractive and splendid, is for him who looks to the bottom of it emptiness. Emptiness is equal the world's essence, world's doings. Now he who is religious does not occupy himself with the deceitful semblance, with the empty appearances, but looks upon the essence, and in the essence has the truth. The essences which are deduced from some appearances are the evil essences, and conversely from others the good. The essence of human feeling, for instance, is love. The essence of human will is the good, that of one's thinking, the true, and so on. What at first passed for existence, such as the world and its like, appears now as bare semblance, and the truly existent is much rather the essence, whose realm is filled with gods, spirits, demons, with good or bad essences. Only this inverted world, the world of essences, truly exists now. The human heart may be loveless, but its essence exists, God, who is love. Human thought may wander in error, but its essence, truth, exists. God is truth, and the like. To know and acknowledge essences alone and nothing but essences, that is religion. Its realm is a realm of essences, spooks, and ghosts. The longing to make the spook comprehensible, or to realize nonsense, has brought about a corporeal ghost, a ghost or spirit with a real body, an embodied ghost. How the strongest and most talented Christians have tortured themselves to get a conception of this ghostly apparition. But there always remained the contradiction of two natures, the divine and human, the ghostly and sensual. There remained the most wondrous spook, a thing which was not a thing. Never yet was a ghost more soul-torturing, and no shaman who pricks himself to raving fury and nerve-lacerating cramps to conjure a ghost can endure such soul torment as Christians suffered from that most incomprehensible ghost. But through Christ the truth of the matter had at the same time come to light, and that the veritable spirit or ghost is man. The corporeal or embodied spirit is just man. He himself is the ghostly being, and at the same time the being's appearance and existence. Henceforth man no longer, in typical cases, shudders at ghosts outside him, but at himself. He is terrified at himself. In the depth of his breast dwells the spirit of sin. Even the faintest thought, and this is itself a spirit, may be a devil, etc. The ghost has put on a body. God has become man, but now man is to himself the gruesome spook which he seeks to get back of, to exercise, to fathom, to bring to reality and to speech. Man is spirit. What matter if the body wither, if only the spirit is saved? Everything rests on the spirit, and the spirit or soul's welfare becomes the exclusive goal. Man has become to himself a ghost, an uncanny spook, to which there is even assigned a distinct seat in the body. Dispute over the seat of the soul, whether in the head, the heart, etc. You are not to me, and I am not to you, a higher essence. Nevertheless, a higher essence may be hidden in each of us, and call forth a mutual reverence. To take at once the most general, man lives in you and me. If I did not see man in you, what occasion should I have to respect you? To be sure, you are not man and his true and adequate form, but only a mortal veil of his, from which he can withdraw without himself seizing. But yet for the present this general and higher essence is housed in you, and you present before me, because an imperishable spirit has in you assumed a perishable body, so that really your form is only an assumed one. A spirit that appears in you without being bound to your body, and to this particular mode of appearance, therefore, a spook. Hence I do not regard you as a higher essence, but only respect that higher essence which walks in you. I respect man in you. The ancients did not observe anything of this sort in their slaves, and the higher essence man found as yet little response. To make up for this, they saw in each other ghosts of another sort, the people, is a higher essence than an individual, and like man or the spirit of man, a spirit haunting the individual, the spirit of the people. For this reason they revered this spirit, and only so far as he served this or else a spirit related to it, as in the spirit of the family, could the individual appear significant. Only for the sake of the higher essence the people was consideration allowed to be the member of the people. As you are hallowed to us by man who haunts you, so at every time men have been hallowed by some other higher essence, or other like people, family, and such. Only for the sake of a higher essence has anyone been honoured from of old. Only as a ghost has he been regarded in the light of a hallowed, a projected and recognized person. If I cherish you because I hold you dear, because in you my heart finds nourishment, my need satisfaction, then it is not done for the sake of a higher essence whose hallowed body you are, not on account of my beholding in you a ghost, an appearing spirit, but from egoistic pleasure. You yourself with your essence are valuable to me. For the essence is not a higher one, is not higher and more general than you, is unique like you yourself, because it is you. But it is not only man that haunts, so does everything. The higher essence, the spirit that walks in everything, is at the same time bound to nothing, and only appears in it, ghosts in every corner. Here would be the place to pass the haunting spirits in review, if they were not to come before us again further on in order to vanish before egoism. Hence let only a few of them be particularized by way of example, in order to bring us at once to our attitude toward them. Sacred above all is the Holy Spirit, sacred the truth, sacred a right, law, a good cause, majesty, marriage, the common good, order, the fatherland, and so on.